I'm Theodore Danchu, and I'm leading the development team of the JasperReports IO product at TIBCO. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about the JasperReports IO security in general, and take a look at the WordPress plugin we created in order to demonstrate how to use JasperReports IO functionality behind the security of a parent application that leverages its reporting and data visualization capabilities. We'll first take a look at JasperReports IO security in general. Then we'll see how to proxy the entire REST API that JasperReports IO exposes behind the parent application. We'll see how the JasperReports IO WordPress plugin was created, and in order to embed reports and data visualizations into blog posts and pages. And we'll see how this WordPress plugin leverages WordPress security in order to deliver output in a secure way. I have JasperReports IO Professional Edition version 1.0 deployed on my machine, and it started already it's working on port 8080. We can see it running if we open the browser and go to this demo application, which helps you understand what the service does and how you could use it. I remind you that JasperReports IO is a web application that only exposes pure REST API and doesn't have a UI on its own. There would be nothing to look at when we talk about the JasperReports IO web application itself. Here, we're looking at a different application, a demo application that is part of the install package and show some of the documentation and the sample reports. Let's look at some of the sample reports that we deliver by default. So if I open this tabular report, it is the interactive report viewer that pops up and allows me to interact with the report. If it's a multi-page report, I can move to one page to another, and I can export to PDF. So what I'm seeing here is a demo web application that uses the REST API of the JasperReports IO web application behind the scenes to produce this content. But this is not the main way people are supposed to use our reporting service. The reporting service is supposed to be used by making REST calls programmatically from the parent application and pass in the parameter information into the request and then capture the output produced by the service from the response we get back after that call. So it's unlikely that somebody would actually expose this service running on port 8080 on the public website where they want to embed report visualizations. Instead, the parent application that needs the output from JasperReports IO would actually proxy all the calls that are destined to produce reporting and data visualizations. It will proxy all of them behind the scenes and make the reporting functionality appear like it's part of the parent application. Let's take an example. I have a website created with WordPress. We can consider this to be my public-facing website. I actually have a virtual host here called Theodore, and it's running WordPress. And this is my public website. I have embedded a few visualizations here created with JasperReports, which happens to run on the same machine, but it's not actually available publicly within the browser. When I hit this page, I see a report displaying a map. And this report, although is delivered by JasperReports IO behind the scenes, appears to be part of my website. Even if I look at the requests made by this page using the browser development tools, we can see clearly that all requests are made back to the Theodore virtual host. There's no request made to JasperReports IO directly, which runs on port 8080. all the requests are made back to WordPress, because WordPress is proxying all the REST API that JasperReports IO exposes and makes it part of WordPress itself. This is a typical use case scenario in which JasperReports IO runs in the local network, behind the firewall, delivers the output, but it's never visible directly from the client browser. It's never public, and it's never available from outside. Everything it produces is accessed through the parent application, which acts like a proxy. There are all kinds of proxies, because you can make a simple proxy with a simple Apache server configuration, but that's not what people should do. With a simple proxy like that, we would allow anybody from outside to make any request to JasperReports IO and potentially have access to information that you're not supposed to see. Instead, proxies like these are supposed to deal with security as well. And why is that? This is because JasperReports IO is a specialized service, and we created JasperReports IO only with reporting and data visualization in mind. We wanted to do only one thing and do it very well. So JasperReports IO as a service does only deal with reporting and data visualizations and nothing else. It doesn't have anything to do with security. It doesn't have a scheduler. It doesn't deal with repository management or anything like that. So in order to use JasperReports IO in a secure way, you have to proxy it and put it behind the security of the parent application that embeds its functionality. And this is what we've done with the WordPress plugin we created here. We created a WordPress plugin which extends the REST API that WordPress itself has as a platform or as a website development application. We extended WordPress REST API by adding all the endpoints of the JasperReports IO REST API. These endpoints of the JasperReports IO REST API are found in the REST API reference. And you can see there are two main categories of REST API calls that you can make in order to generate reports. One is for the so-called report service, which is for production or operational reporting, which delivers report in PDF, Excel, and other formats. And you only need to take care of specifying which report you want to run, what output format you expect, and what are the parameters the report accepts. And we have a few examples showing this. The second main category of REST API endpoints are about interactive report viewing. This is a bit more complex because when viewing a report in interactive mode, there are several types of REST API calls that are made. First of all, we trigger a request for the report to be run. Then, after a while, we interrogate the service to learn if the report has finished, whether page number 3 is available. We ask the service to give us a certain page in HTML format so that we display it in an interactive way. We check about the status of the report, we check about the status of a page, we are able to stop executing a report or even remove the report from memory. So there are more than a dozen endpoints that are related to the interactive viewer experience that we have with JasperReports IO. And all these endpoints that JasperReports IO exposes would need to be proxied by the parent application. And this is what we've done with the JasperReports IO plugin in order to achieve an interactive report viewing experience inside WordPress. I'm going to switch to the source code of the plugin, and I'm not myself a PHP developer, I was able to create this plugin using examples from other developers. So what I will show you is that what the plugin does is to register all the endpoints that make up our REST API. If we look at the list of endpoints in our REST API documentation, we will find all of them, starting with the service to have a report generated. Then all the endpoints related to interactive report executions, all starting with the report execution prefix. We find here the endpoint for checking the status, for getting back information about the report, for exporting the report in a certain format, for checking the status of a certain report execution, for changing parameters once the report has been executed and we want to re-execute it. So all the endpoints that we find in our REST API documentation in these chapters here, they're all present in the WordPress plugin where we proxied all of them. So what exactly are we doing? Well, every time we receive a request that belongs to the JasperReports IO REST API, we are using the plugin to create a request behind the scenes from within WordPress to the JasperReports IO instance that runs on the same service, on the same server. And we are passing the same parameters, and then we capture the response and give it back to the browser. So all this transfer of parameters and capturing the output to send it back to the browser, basically creating the proxy that we talked about, can be found in one of the source files of the plugin that deal with this proxying mechanism. Here we can take a look, just a quick look at the doProxy function to see that we receive a request and we read the parameters from the request, and then we create a totally new request that we make programmatically towards the GRIO instance that runs side by side with my WordPress server. And we pass in all the parameters, all the headers that we received. And then when we get back a response, either an error or a legitimate response from JasperReports IO, we give it back to the browser as if it was WordPress who executed that request itself. Now, this is basic proxying, but in order to leverage the security infrastructure of WordPress, we had to do more. And let me show you an example. Of course, this was a map report. We have other examples showing custom visualizations with figures and other JavaScript-based B3 kind of visualizations. And we even have some table reports and others. But we also have a special report that we created, which displays information about the current logged in user in WordPress. I'm not logged into WordPress. This is why my user ID is 0 and there's no login name, no email, no nothing, because I'm not logged into WordPress. But if I log into WordPress and I execute the same report, let's see what we get. I'm now logged into WordPress. You can see I'm admin here. And if I go to the same page with that report, it tells me I'm admin and this is my user information. These are so-called built-in parameters, which are specific to this plugin, and we inject them automatically with our plugin. We could even take a look at the source code to see them. And in the REST API, every time we receive a request, we inject parameters with a certain name by reading this information from the WordPress infrastructure. And because this is done behind the scenes by our plugin, there's no way an end user could pretend is somebody he or she is not. This information cannot be hijacked or injected by parameters in the request or anything. These are dealt with only by the plugin itself. So it's guaranteed that is accurate information. And imagine the reports could leverage these built-in parameters to filter out queries and have reports that use the user login name in the query in the whereby clause, where I could display order or invoice information that belong to the currently logged in user. And there's even one more twist to all this. You probably saw, and if you can always check within our REST API, that almost all the calls we make for having the output of a report or status information about it, or soliciting a new type of output or export, every time we make a REST call to JasperReports IO, we pass in a report execution ID. The only case where we don't have a report execution ID is when we trigger a new report execution. When we make that first call, we get back the report execution, which will be essential to continuing our discussion with the service about the status of that report. So the report execution ID is central to the communication between the client and the service about the status of a report execution. What could happen is that somebody could attempt to steal a report execution ID and forge a request pretending he is somebody who generated that report and wants to know more about the status or have the report back in PDF format. We are protecting the users against this type of attack by keeping track of the report execution IDs that have been created on the current user session in WordPress. With this, we have additional checks in the plugin code in which we verified that the report execution ID that has been passed in the call is a report execution ID that belongs to a report on the current user session. And with that, we allow users to see only reports that they have triggered themselves. And we cannot have them look at reports generated by some other WordPress users. A user can only see the reports that he or she have launched, not the reports of somebody else. And such checks are made for certain endpoints that accept a report execution ID as parameter, and we make function calls such as verify execution ID. So we keep track of up to 10 last reports that have been executed on the current user session, and only report execution IDs in this list that we keep are considered valid and we deliver output for. I can show you that right now we have only one report execution ID, but if I execute a few more reports, Let's execute the book report as well. If we go back to the list of report execution ID, I now have 3 different report execution ID. We keep up to 10. So when the 11th report is executed, we get rid of the oldest one. So we only keep the last 10. The way we implemented this plugin is a typical way for using JasperReports IO behind the security layer of the parent application through a proxy. You can use this POC we created for WordPress to create something similar for your own application, regardless of the platform or technology you are using. So what you learned today is that JasperReports IO doesn't have a security functionality of its own. It completely relies on the security infrastructure that exists in the parent application that it uses. And most of the time, this involves creating a proxy that covers all the REST API of JasperReports IO and makes it part of the parent application.